Hey, everyone. It's Michelle Belisari with the Real Estate Reinvention Podcast. Sorry, we're a couple of minutes late today. I was at a broker's open, so you know how that rolls. I am super excited, though, to have the fabulous Christine George on today to talk all things marketing, a little bit about what's going on in this interesting market. I don't like using the word crazy. I like the word interesting because I find it very interesting. Christine is the co-founder of Post and Being Creative, podcast host, Know Like Trust for Real Estate. So welcome, Christine, to the podcast
Thanks,
today.
Michelle. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. So what's the latest and greatest that you can share with the agents today on what they might want to be doing right now in this interesting market?
It is an interesting market. I'll tell you, my business partner and I did actually a whole webinar on, how to decipher what your value is and really understand it so that you can communicate it. And I think the best thing that agents can do right now is to double down on their value. Like, if there was ever a time to go deep and reflect on who you are, who you serve, and how you do it, now is that time. Because you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to continue to prove consumers, prospects, buyers, and sellers, they're asking the question, what's your value? What are you going to do for me? They are confused. They think they're paying us too much money. So now is not the time to tout how many awards you have. It's not the time to talk about how much business you transact, because they know you get paid by commissions and they can do the math. Now is the time to get down into the weeds and focus on your people. Be an active listener. When you sit down with them, ask questions. Get to know who they are, what their dreams are, what their goals are, and then figure out how you can support them. I mean, that is the best thing that I think any agent can do in this environment.
So maybe sit down, and you could do this with just a legal pad. You could do it on Google Docs and make a list of your value, that things that you do that you bring to the table, and then maybe have something put together a little more polished that you can share with your potential clients at a listing presentation, buyer presentation, all of the above, right?
Yes. And I think that, there are so many things that real estate agents do day in and day out when they're in the middle of a transaction. There's so much problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
There are always, as you know, roadblocks in the way. There are many things that you're doing that your clients don't even know that you're doing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so now is the time to actually sit down and write down every little thing that you do. Like, what exactly are you doing? And it is really okay to communicate that to
Yeah,
your clients. Let them know that, hey, you are here to pick up the pieces, to keep the pieces together, to make sure that the process is as seamless as humanly possible, and that you've got their back. I mean, that's what they want to hear.
agreed. I think that's huge. And because I am such a believer in real estate niches, whether it's on the buyer side or the seller side, I know, for example, when I'm working with people that are downsizing, right? There's so many moving pieces to that.
Mhm.
And I just brought two properties on the market, from the clean out to the um, packing of things they're going to keep, packing of things that are going to donate, and all of these other, like the text message, the phone calls, the coordination, that here, I'll go meet you there, right? So I think that's a great idea. Do you think that that would translate well on a series of reels, for example, on Instagram?
Potentially. I think what you definitely don't want to do is put a list of 100 things together and put it out there
Mhm.
and say, hey, this is
No.
everything that I do. That's overwhelming. Out of context, it doesn't mean anything. what might be a good idea is maybe to take a story, an example of something that happened in a transaction that you did, and talk about how you helped that client through that challenge. And you don't have to use names and you don't have to use addresses and things like that. But anytime you can tell a story that's relatable and how you helped solve that problem,
Mm-hmm.
it's a win-win situation. I mean, that's what people can really understand and relate to.
Agreed. Agreed. What other scenarios do you think agents need to be focusing on right now?
I think consistency is another big thing. I mean, that is a big thing for us at Post and Beam, like not everything from, how you visually present yourself to how you speak, the language that you use, to even the clothes that you wear, like Michelle, you are so consistent. Like I can always count on you having the Soboka, logo in the corner, your flowers, and you have this tropical vibe about you, right? Your blonde hair, like when I see it, I know it's you. And
Yeah,
that's what you want to do. When you're branding yourself, it's not just about your logo. It's about your
yeah,
whole persona. And I think that's what's really kind of exciting about being a single entrepreneur or solopreneur, a real estate agent. Your value is you. Your brand is the essence of you. It's not your logo, it's everything. It's how you carry yourself, and it's the reputation that you carry, And so I think if you can look at your brand in that way, that it's this
yeah.
accumulation of all of these things, and then consistently put it out there digitally, in person, in print, you know, in every way possible, you'll become memorable for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's a very valuable piece that you're sharing. And it doesn't happen overnight,
No,
That's the
no.
thing. But when you're consistent, right? And I
Yes.
love Lily Pulitzer. So I look at Lily Pulitzer and I'm like, that's who I am, right? I have
Yes.
Lily on today. This is an Amazon caftan. My girlfriend who at our broker open, she goes, you literally look like a throwback to a 1960s Miami realtor. I said,
I
I
love it.
know. That was the vibe I was going for today. It's short in the front and long in the back, but it's a beach townhouse. So I was like in a beachy vibe. And
Yes. Yes.
but that's who I am, right? Who I'm not is a whole other side, a story that I don't I can't live that, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
how do you help agents determine like how to really find their brand? Because one of the things I found with agents is like they think like a hashtag is their brand. I'm like, not really. It
Mm-mm.
depends. Like Soboka is a hashtag. That is my brand. But Susie sells Cincinnati, for example. To me, that's not a brand. That's just a tagline, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so you have to kind of come up with, and I was helping someone the other day with this, and it was a challenge because it's a city that's in two different areas. Like how some cities it's the same name but different
Mm-hmm.
country, or
Mm-hmm.
so we're brainstorming a little bit on that. So how would you suggest that agents get started coming up with their memorable brand?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, to take a step back, this is how I look at it. There are 1.5 million agents in the United States. Everybody's singing the same song. Everybody is doing the same thing because we're all doing it because we feel like we're supposed to be doing whatever it is we're doing. And the end of the day, we all look like each other. Like everybody looks the same. Everybody is blending in. And then the other thing that happens with agents is they look like someone might look at you, Michelle, and say, "Oh, wow, she's so successful." Like, maybe if I start wearing Lily Pulitzer, I'm going to be as successful as Michelle is. And that is like the absolute wrong
Yeah.
thing to do. So the way I like to look at it, I think just like our DNA, everybody is unique. And I think because we're like, living within our own skin, we don't always see or recognize what that special sauce is about ourselves. Some people do, most of us don't. Most of us don't. We're just getting it done, right? We don't always sit down and reflect on what is that thing that makes me different from everybody else. And that's where I like to start. I like to start by discovering and helping the client understand, like, who are you? What do you stand for? What do you love? What don't you love? Like, what brings you joy? What is it about you that when we talk about it, you light
Yeah.
up, you know? So
Yeah.
that's like the first thing. Like, what are your strengths? We also talk about, hey, what are those things that you don't like to do? Like, what are you not good at and what you like to do?
Wow.
Because it is well worth the investment to outsource that to somebody else.
Yeah.
Because when you're not doing that, you're doing the things that make it rain, right? That is so important. And then the next thing that we do is, okay, who do you want to serve? Who's your ideal client? I know this resonates with you, Michelle, because we have talked about niches so much. Understanding who your ideal client is,
Yes.
whether it's downsizers like you say, or whether it's like an even deeper niche like ocean view buyers and sellers, whatever it might be. Get really clear about who it is you want to serve. Like, who are the clients that you love working
Yeah.
with, that bring you the greatest joy? And then focus all of your prospecting and all of your marketing around attracting those clients. So those are like the first three things I do.
I love it.
Give me the essence of you. Let's understand what you don't love to do. And then let's get really clear on who your ideal client is so that then we can put a plan together that reflects who you are and helps attract who you love to work with.
And then you can apply the consistency all day long, right?
Totally. It
So
becomes scalable, it becomes
yeah,
profitable, and you become known for something.
yeah. And that's, I was talking to Patricia Ann Young, who I'm really good friends with in Dallas, and she's with Real Broker like I am. And we were talking about being in the business for a long time. And I know we always laugh about it, and younger agents snicker, like, oh, she said she's in the business for 20 years. Well, here's the deal, kids. We bring some damn value because we've been in the business that long. But I said to her, I said, well, the one thing I can tell you right now is I will out consistent anyone.
Yeah.
Like I will out freaking, and that's not even the word I want to use, consistent anyone, because that to me is a challenge. I'm like, okay, fine. I can do stories. I can do a lot of social media. I can do this and that. But if you put me up to the challenge, oh, I'll out consistent all day long.
Yeah.
And she started laughing because she said, that is true though. She said, I think when you've been in the business for a long time, you learn like what you don't like. And
Yep.
and FYI disclosure, this is not a fair housing thing, guys. This is just niches, like types of situations. Like I would say, I focus on death, divorce, and downsizing, the triple D. And then on the buyer side, I focus on relocation because I'm in South Florida. There's
Yeah.
nothing there that's a fair housing thing. So I just want to be clear on that. When you're picking your avatar, picking your niche, it's really about how much product can you move. And
Mhm.
that's also, good conversation that we can have, which is picking a niche that has product. Because if you
Mhm.
pick the wrong niche and there's only 3 sales a year, it's not gonna work.
Right. Well, it's so funny you mentioned this too, because I had a conversation with Karen Stone, Park City, Utah. And when you
Yes.
talk about, she was a realtor in Manhattan, like one of the
Oh,
toughest markets in the world, right? Yeah. When you talk about, different niches, like she was serving people who were anywhere from renters, up to luxury clients, all living in a vertical, right?
yes,
In a
yes,
tight space with no land. And now she's in Park City where, her clientele is really second home buyers.
yeah,
And they're buying single family homes, large, pieces of
yeah,
real estate,
yeah,
it's completely different.
yeah,
And so, you know, she has really learned that her approach to both, while her level of service can be the same, her approach to both clients is very, very different because the product is different.
Exactly. And it's so interesting. When I was pharmaceutical rep, speaking of Manhattan, the Manhattan reps literally had like a building as their territory, which was not relatable because I'm urban sprawl in South Florida. But then I got it because there were so many doctors, for example, in a building that was their niche, that was their territory,
Yep.
right? So it's so interesting how, and I think this is a good topic too, is she went from that. I'm not sure her backstory, but the pivot,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the one thing I will say, is in 2008, I didn't pivot fast enough when the market crashed. A lot of people didn't. So I've learned to pivot. And so
Yep.
pivoting right now can include, are you a solo agent? Do you need to be on a team right now? And Sharon
Right.
Travata, our president at Real, talks about this. And that's a real true thing. Like maybe you need to be on a team for a little bit. There's no shame in that game. Um, what do you need to do to pivot? Are you strong on the buyer side? If you are, that's great, but you've got to start adding that listing component,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So for agents that aren't sure how to pivot, what are your thoughts to them on that right now?
Well, heck, I think now is the time to do it.
Yeah.
It's just like in 2008, and then when COVID hit, and now, with all the changes now, whenever there's a big change, I find that that's when the opportunity is out there to do
Mm.
something different.
Yeah, I
You
agree
know,
with you. When has it been a time that you've done a big pivot?
2 years ago when I started this company.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heck, and I'll tell you, I worked in corporate America for the first 15 years of my career. Then I came into real estate and worked on the corporate side of real estate for 15 years. And I got the bug, from all of
Yeah.
you real estate agents who were really entrepreneurs, hustlers, hard workers. Um, and I really came to appreciate the hard work that goes into building a business and said, heck, I can do this and I can help others do it. So um, it was scary, Michelle.
Oh
It's
yeah.
scary. Any
Yeah.
kind of change, pivot, transition, shift, it's scary. But what's the alternative? You don't do it, and then you don't reap the benefits of it.
Right.
If you do it and you fail, you pick yourself up and you learn from it and you keep moving.
Because what you don't want is to look in the rearview mirror and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm in the same place I was 2 years ago."
Yeah.
Right? And I think we as women entrepreneurs, I always like to focus on the fact, yes, we're realtors, we're really entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
And I think women in this business are so powerful on how we share, how we leverage, and learn from each other, and some of the stresses that agents are dealing with.
Hmm.
Women tend to be the caregivers and the caretakers. So I know a lot of my friends right now, because of where I am in my chapter of life, are looking after parents. They're dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's.
Yep.
There may be a sandwich generation. Some of them are taking care of their grandchildren. They're still very busy with real estate, but that's the reality for that demographic. And so I think that's when, and I used to laugh at this when I would see the older agents and they just listed property. They really didn't run around with buyers because they've been doing it a long time. And then they went, oh, I don't have the energy. And I think it's okay to say that, like
Hmm.
you get to that stage. And I think knowing that too, along with pivoting, having the consistency, is also knowing what your energy is and what your bandwidth is. Wouldn't you agree?
I totally agree. And it kind of goes back to the beginning of our conversation, which was all around your authenticity, right? And so I think part of your being authentic within yourself and building that authentic brand means being true to who you are. And
Yeah.
that you don't stay the same. We don't stay stagnant, to your point. We change over time. And what you need or want today is going to be different from what that looks like 10 years from now or 20 years from now. And it's totally okay. You've earned the right to shift a little bit and to do
Yeah.
things a little bit differently. And I think it's one of the opportunities for agents of a certain age to really think about what their exit strategy is going to be. That's
Yeah.
also a big part of your business. So you have to look forward and say, there is going to come a time when I don't have the energy to be running around all the time. So how am I going to transition my business in a way that I can continue to be profitable? And so, yes, all of those things are super important and are part of building a successful brand.
I think you're absolutely right. And to add to that is that if you are a competitive person and you like you're feeling that, I think when and you can say, okay, I need to start focusing on higher price points. How am I going to shift into that so I don't have to do as many transactions? Perfectly fine, by the way. I behind the scenes, if I told you how many people I'm talking to who are saying, I don't really care how many deals a year I do, this is what I want to make.
Yep.
And this is the price point that's going to get it to me. So maybe that's 10 to 12 deals a year. Am I going to be like the standout person at XYZ Corporation? Maybe not, but I'm happy with what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
And I'm still maintaining a brand and I'm still a referral resource and whatnot. And I think that's like where I'm going with real estate reinvention is talking more and more about some of these things that are being talked about behind the scenes, because there's definitely a line between um, agents that are newer to the industry and then agents that have been in the industry at least 12 years.
Sure. Yeah.
So, with that being said, I know you have a hard stop. Any parting advice and where everyone can find you? And where are you speaking next, my friend?
Oh my goodness. So I am actually booked at Katie Lance's Mastermind a little bit later in the year. So I will be there. I've got a couple of things brewing, so I'm super excited about that. More on that later. But I would love to connect with your community. I would love it. I am Christine Carlo George on all the socials. You can find me at postandbeamcreative.com. I just love connecting and building the relationships with all the wonderful people in our industry. And so
Yeah.
I would love to connect.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time today. And
And thank
make sure y'all are following Christine and connecting with her and seeing how she can help you in your business. I'm Michelle Belisari, Real Estate Reinvention. I am with Real Broker since 2021. If you have any questions about Real, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you about my why of coming over to Real back in 2021. Thanks again, Christine.
Thank you, Michelle. Take care.
Thanks.